This is Just Amazon on Monday, January 28th, 2019. Ignore this line. It's the downtrend channel line that on the 5 minute doesn't really line up as well. And I'll show you on the daily what it really looks like. So kind of ignore that, even though it looks like we broke that very nicely right here. And it's like, oh, if that line was real, but it's not really in the right place. So anyway, nice little consolidation, gap down from Friday. So Friday's candle was a bullish retest gap, which and a bullish candle, which makes today be a bearish gap and go. And we started to sell off really early pre-market, and then had this nice indecision candle right in here. I really like that we were right up here underneath the 1665. I was hoping that it would open up in this range and give a better entry for going bearish. But you had a nice little retest. I guess not really a retest. It's a nice indecision bullish candle. Anybody buying pre-market looking for it to bounce here is trapped if it runs down. And what happens? It ran down quickly. It moved almost 20 points. Let's see, 20, almost 20, like 17. So yeah, exactly 17. Okay, we'll go with 17 since it's exact. But anyway, that was a very nice move. Difficult to get into with puts. Also, it's earnings week for Amazon, so even harder to get into puts. Really large candle here, breaks down. It's like we're just hovering right over 1754. I'm like waiting for it to get there so it'll bounce, hopefully, right? Still doesn't get there. It's like all of this, it just went after this massive candle. It was basically sideways to slightly down the next couple hours. It's like, really, this is what it's going to do? Okay, finally. Do we get to it? Do we actually touch it? No, 1801. Still couldn't get there. Nice candle. Okay, there we go. Now we're in. That's nice. Oh, that's a nice indecision candle right on the line. Still touching 1754. So, I'm counting that. This is a great place for it to bounce. Squeeze just fired, but we're kind of exhausted towards the bearish side. What if this reverses and goes bullish from here? How cool would that be? Great place to buy. Great place to get out if you were bearish and we're in bearish from somehow Friday. That would have been great. But more likely, somehow you snag something in here going down, possibly. Anyway, great place to buy. What happens? It gets bought up. Gets up here, gets a nice little retest. This is a nice hammer-ish candle. Once we got to these candles, we didn't come back and touch 1754. So it held its price there. And then this just continued back up the rest of the day. So, 2.5 hours of just kind of grinding sideways to down, and then 4 hours of going up. And it was very difficult to trade the options day. Let me start with this one. So had you been buying here, what would you have been using? Maybe the 1700 call. The 1700 call was $2,200. So having a $100 risk is really, really difficult. That was 11 o'clock candle. Now, this candle's range somehow was under $1. But you would have been buying here or that other one that pulled back. I think that was right at 12 o'clock. Let's just double check. Yep, right at 12 o'clock. Could have been buying there at 12 o'clock. And that one's only 45 cents on the range. So could have possibly been getting in 22 by 21. Now that's really much more expensive than I like to go on an option. I'm much happier with it being 10, not 21 or 22 or something. So I'm thinking, okay, let's go out a little bit further and just see what we'll work with here. So let's look at the 1750 call. And okay, this one's more to my liking. The price is around 10, but at 11 o'clock, we're right here at 1080 to 1040. Okay, at 12 o'clock, we've got like no movement at all. So, obviously lighter volume than the 1700. So, I mean, you're not going to risk 2 cents, obviously, but you could have been setting it up like 1050 by 950, and that could work. But the issue is like it didn't even make it, barely made it to 1250, barely, really barely. And the kind of move it had today, I mean, this kind of rally on a normal week, this would have been a few R, like 4 or 5 or 7 or maybe not 10. Friday could be 10, but on a Monday, I mean, 4 or 5 definitely. But it's earnings week, and so it got barely 2R, and that's if you got in at 1050. Now, had you gotten in like as it broke out, like maybe 1075, 1075 by 975, well, it didn't get back up to 1275. So it was only up there in the first couple of candles of the day. This one too, technically. So, okay, the calls weren't really worth getting into. What about getting in on this put? What if somehow you got filled on this put, going to sell off, you get out when it hits 16, 17, 50 at 11 o'clock? Okay, let's look at the 1550 put. We're way out of the money. This, from this open at 1570 down to the low of 1465. I mean, that's more than $1 to pull back on the open. Again, just difficult to get into it. And then this lower wick here, way up at 20 and 30 cents, that was that wick right there. It looks like it got way closer to this than that would suggest, but that's the premium. It just doesn't get baked back in. Once the price gets inflated like this, it's going to stay up there. Market makers aren't going to give anything back, like better entries this week. And then you had a nice gentle slope up. So it's possible to have been kind of tracking with, a pullback to a line here. I'm not going to drop because this is just way too expensive. So like had you gotten in on this one, I mean, maybe you're getting in 24 by 23 somehow. Maybe that line and this line. So those lines together will point to buy here. And then you get out for 2R at 26. Maybe. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's worth the risk to reward, especially if something happens and it just collapses like the opening candle here. I mean, that kind of stuff can happen. So anyway, I was, like I said last week, I don't anticipate trading maybe later in the week, and it's got to hit like everything just right. And this hit just right. Like this really did. Great Morningstar reversal. A hammer just barely above. I mean, both of these were great opportunities to buy. Great. Amazing setup. Buy right here and just hold on for the day. Let it at least retrace some of this move. It did that. And because of it being earnings week, just the premium wasn't low enough, and the premium getting baked into it just wasn't high enough to have a great reward. So I don't want to be so discouraging or something on this. It's how things look. So here we are on the daily. This line, we didn't, the way that this candle looks, it looks like we got down to 1607. We didn't. We got into 1617.54, but it's a great place to have this kind of a candle. This is a really nice hammer candle. It definitely reminds me of this one and this one. If we are considering that we're near some, downtrend line, which we are, that we could get into a new range. And that's the speculative part. I'm saying maybe a new range. I don't know if it'll actually do that. I don't know if it has any of the conviction or momentum to do that. But remember, today was a bearish gap and go, and it could still pull back some more. It does not have to hold this level. There are a lot of people buying today. It could gap down below them and continue lower. We had a bearish retest gap on this one. We had kind of a regular inside gap here. So we really haven't had, this kind of a bearish gap and go, as part of this pattern. Let's see, where did we have a bearish gap and go? This was a bearish gap and go. We were already into the range a little bit here. That was a nice one. Bearish gap and go. I haven't looked for these in a little bit. Just looking for the one near pivots. Sort of that one, but not really. So here we go. This one here too. So out of a indecision candle, bearish gap and go. Just not clearing things, but I'm sorry, it did clear things. It bounced nicely off the line, and then it sold off the next day. So we got a bit of a bounce. We could sell off tomorrow, and do something similar out of this range as we did here and some other places like here. So, this is acting as a resistance for this gap. This definitely looks like kind of a double top or a head and shoulders here. And we're right on the neckline, and now it's decision point. Is it going to break down, retest back up, maybe to 1617.50 or 54, maybe to 1607? Is it just going to sell off for a couple of days till earnings and then gap? I don't know. Just have to keep watching the 5-minute and trade the chart in front of us. That's what we're trying to do, and compare the options to the stock movements. And it's just tough to see things moving so slow today on the options. So we'll be back tomorrow with another video, and just be cautious with any trading you're doing this week on AMZN. Hope you enjoyed this video. This is just an AMZN. Thanks.